When I was suffering quite a bit from morning sickness, my husband mercilessly abused me, saying something like, "Housewives shouldn't be lazy," and "What's your point of existing if you just do nothing around the house all day?" The morning sickness was already taking a toll on my physical health, and that kind of abuse was taking a toll on my mental health, which is a lot more difficult to improve once it's not at its healthiest. However, one day, he was rushed to the emergency room because of some severe stomach cramps. When I rushed to his hospital room, he tried to talk to me in a muffled voice, but I decided to ignore him completely. This is a story of how arrogance and inconsideration to others can backfire, and how my husband's stomach cramps were the least of his problems. My name is Helen, and I'm a 36-year-old housewife. My husband was Abraham, Abe for short, and he is the same age as me. He was an office worker, and we had known each other for a long time, ever since we were students at the same college. We were married in what is known as a shotgun marriage. Basically, the only reason we got married earlier than we both had planned was because he got me pregnant. I was 2 months pregnant when this story began. Right around then, I started having a hard time coping with severe morning sickness. I'm innately sensitive to smells, and under normal circumstances, I absolutely loved the smell of freshly cooked rice and baked bread. But tragically, for a time, even those smells became my mortal enemy, so to speak. The symptoms were really bad in the first place, but the most painful of all was my husband's attitude towards my situation.
Hey, breakfast isn't ready yet. I have to go to work in 15 minutes, Helen.
I'm not feeling so well, honey. Can you make your own toast for this morning, at least?
Huh? Not this again. You're doing this every day.
But of course it's every day. I told you time and again I have morning sickness.
How long are you gonna keep saying that as an excuse to slack off on your responsibilities? You're gonna be a stay-at-home mom, and you can sit around not breaking a sweat all day while I work to provide for us. Why can't you at least cook your husband breakfast? What's even the point of staying at home, huh? Hey.
Whenever I wanted to take it easy, he accused me of being lazy and irresponsible. Before we were married, we used to have so much fun together, going out for drinks and singing karaoke and stuff like that. But I don't suppose that it's now, right when I was going through hard times like these, that I began to discover the true nature of the one I love. I had lost weight from not being able to eat much of anything without regurgitating it all, coupled with the stress of my husband abusing me. He was also very frustrated about the fact that I was too weak to go out with them. A good example.
Hey, I'm going to a barbecue with my friends during the next holiday. You're going too, right?
What are you talking about? There's no way I can go. Just the thought of the smell of cooking meat and other kinds of food made me want to vomit. Abe gave me a bitter look.
You really are no use to me. All my friends are going to bring their wives.
By that point, just saying what I did had drained me of all of my energy, and I didn't have anything left to talk back anymore. So I plunged my face into the toilet and destroyed the bathroom.
Oh my freaking God. How long are you going to stay in the bathroom? You're so disgusting.
Stop it, Abe. Please. Ugh.
How long is this going to frickin' last? Damn it. It's only a matter of how you think you feel, Helen. If you have a strong will to stop with bullshit, you'll get better in no time. So pathetic.
I kept on vomiting until my stomach only contained acid, and Abe kept on chastising me, abusing me, making me feel bad for suffering this much. I was not in good health by any means, and he was always selfishly demanding that I think about his comfort. I began to wonder if he really could be a good father if he kept this up. I was suffering because I was pregnant. Whose child did he think I was holding right then? I couldn't muster up the energy to even talk to him anymore, so I decided to ignore him. He got so fed up with my attitude that he stopped talking to me altogether. The next weekend, he went to a barbecue with his friends. I was angry with the fact that he didn't give a good goddamn about me, but I thought it was better than being accused of slacking off on the housework all day long. I decided to get some rest while I could, and slept peacefully for the first time in a long time. Then I got a call from my husband who had gone to the barbecue.
Hey, you can be in about half hour or so, but I want you to come on over now. You'll get some good food.
I told you, Abe, I can't. Morning sickness is killing me.
Everyone's making me look bad 'cause you didn't frickin' show up. I don't frickin' get it.
When he was asked why he didn't bring me to the barbecue, he said I was just too lazy because of this stupid morning sickness. Most of the barbecue members were married couples, some of whom had children already, and they apparently resented the fact that Abe left his wife in such an ill state and came to the barbecue to have fun. He felt uncomfortable and decided to improve his image in the group by calling me out to the barbecue. Of course, I couldn't agree to such a reckless act. I answered, "Listen to what your friends have to say for once, Abe. Then you'll see how wrong you are."
What the hell? I don't need a frickin' sermon from anyone, from you especially. It's all your fault I'm not having a good time right now.
You know, I really am suffering from severe morning sickness. Most people can understand that, even children. So why can't you? Did you get hit in the head by a coconut or something?
I'm so pissed. I frickin' hate all of you.
He hung up the phone in a huff. I began to feel more and more uncertain about my future with him, knowing that he was incapable of listening to other people's advice. How in the world could I get him to understand? I knew I would have to be patient and talk it out with him, but I didn't have the energy or strength for that right now. He came home late that night. He told me that he had gone to an izakaya, a Japanese-style pub, for a drink after the barbecue.
The barbecue was boring. The pub was so much fun. I gotta say.
He was in a surprisingly good mood, and I, who had become sensitive to smells since my pregnancy, noticed the faint yet unmistakable scent of apple-scented shampoo coming from Abe's hair. Had he taken a bath somewhere? There was a little hot spring in town, and I remember the soap there having a very fruity smell, so maybe he stopped by to sober up. Another part of me wondered further. Eventually, my morning sickness got better, and I was able to do my chores normally. However, I was left with the nagging memory that Abe had brutally mistreated me during that morning sickness period. Our marriage gradually grew cold. Abe started to come home later and later, and even when he was home, all he did was look at his phone and didn't try to initiate any conversation whatsoever. Moreover, he still strangely smelled of some kind of fruity cologne or shampoo. Stranger still, he only smelled delightful on the days he came home late. Where do you go when you come home late, Abe?
Where am I going? Did work ever cross your mind? Unlike a housewife like you, I'm a busy man.
You know I'm pregnant, right?
Alright, totally forgot about it. And?
You're gonna be a father. I hope you know that, too.
Yeah, Your Highness. Where I rocked your world that one night, so much so that abracadabra, a baby was planted in your belly. What's your point? That's why I'm working so hard, Helen. Unlike you, who has no job, I'm responsibly going out into the world to provide for the growing baby of mine.
Okay, that's enough. I hated to admit it at the time, but all I could think of was that Abe was seeing another woman. On the days he came home late, I was positive he was meeting with this hypothetical woman, and not only showered with her, but went in so far as to do the dance with no pants in a hotel somewhere. I was pregnant, so not only was I more sensitive to smells than I usually was, but my intuition was also heightened to another degree of sharpness. Continued exposure to this fruity cologne drove me to conclude that it's too complex for a man like Abe to wear, and I could conclude the perfume belonged to a woman whom he could be having an affair with. There was no doubt in my mind that my own husband was cheating on me with another woman, and I thought he was nothing but a scumbag to cheat on his wife while she was pregnant. The problem was, I had no evidence. It was a woman's intuition. But such a man being the father of my baby. Raising a child with such a bastard would be a lifelong hardship, one that I honestly didn't feel up to enduring. But I chose this path for myself. I didn't feel like I had any choice other than turning a blind eye to his infidelity and continuing to pretend I didn't strongly suspect it. I was hopeful that once the baby was born, he would change. Maybe he would break up with his lover, assuming he really was having an affair. But then an incident occurred that made me realize how naive I was. I was 6 months pregnant when it happened, and my belly was becoming somewhat prominent. I couldn't carry heavy things anymore, so I started to buy groceries in bulk using a delivery service that a supermarket conglomerate had recently implemented. I had lost a lot of energy during the previous months, suffering from morning sickness and becoming malnourished. Both problems were a thing of the past by then, though, so that was good news. And around then, I was trying to eat foods with high nutritional value. Foods that are low in carbohydrates, fermented foods, and dairy products. I especially love cheese, and always keep my refrigerator crammed with multiple kinds of cheese from around the world.
Hey, the fridge is full of cheese. What are you eating it for? Snacks to come with the drink?
Of course not. I can't drink alcohol. I'm trying to nourish our baby, and I read that dairy products are very good for growing fetuses. I love cheese, so I said, hallelujah.
Looks like we got a nice collection of cheese here. This would make a great snack to go with some wine.
Abe was as indifferent as ever about my pregnancy. Then, one day, I felt a strong pain in my belly. I was making regular appointments with an obstetrician at a nearby general hospital, so I decided to see my doctor right away. I was relieved when I was told that there was nothing wrong with me, that it was the first of a progressive series of cramps that were a signature of a healthy pregnancy. I was admitted to the hospital for a few days of rest and observation. I called Abe to inform him of this. I went to the hospital because I felt a sharp pain in my belly. Nothing was wrong with me, thankfully, but I was admitted to the hospital just to be on the safe side.
Sharp pain in the stomach. Sounds like constipation, if you ask me.
What are you talking about, silly? I'm just worried about an upset stomach because I'm pregnant. But like I said, the doctor said everything was fine and there's nothing wrong with us. but we're going to stay in the hospital and see how things are, just to be safe.
Oh. Okay. Well, that's tough luck, but I agree you should stay in the hospital for a while. Get the rest you need, Helen.
My husband told me in a cheerful voice to take it easy and rest. I thought I would be abused again, but his words made me feel relieved. Maybe my hopes were being answered, and Abe was changing little by little. I took a nice rest, spending 3 days in the hospital. By the end of the second day, I felt completely fine. My tummy tensions had subsided, and I felt much better. But I couldn't help but worry about how the house was faring. Abe was a total klutz when it came to housework. A newborn chimpanzee could do a better job at taking care of a house than Abe could. The kitchen would be in a frenzy, no doubt, and the food in the fridge would need to be thrown out as soon as possible if it was expired. While I was going through the discharge procedures, a nurse called me. Excuse me, Mrs. Banning? I heard that your husband has been taken to the emergency room because of food poisoning. Please make your way there right away. What? Food poisoning? She said that my husband had been taken to the emergency room of that very hospital. I immediately went to the emergency room to check on him. When I got to the bed where my husband was lying, he had his face in a large paper sack and was vomiting continuously. He seemed to be in a lot of pain, and I said to him, "What's wrong? What the hell did you eat that gave you food poisoning?"
I ate a couple bites, and suddenly I felt pretty sick.
He was out of breath and could barely speak. "What did you eat?"
Cheese. Blue cheese.
I was so confused. I didn't remember buying any blue cheese. But then something occurred to me. I suspected that he had eaten some normal cheese that had gone moldy, and I had forgotten to throw it away before I was admitted to the hospital. I felt so bad for Abe. My husband was suffering so much because of my lack of responsibility over food safety. But in the next moment, all feelings of sympathy and apology disappeared instantly. I suddenly realized that I could hear someone else vomiting as well, and it came from the bed next to Abe's. I looked over and saw a woman, dressed in nothing but her bra and underwear, with her own face in an empty paper bag. She was in exactly the same state as my husband. And there was one detail that changed everything. She smelled like that perfume. The same perfume that Abe always had on the days he came home late. I heard the doctor talking to her.
So you got sick after eating blue cheese?
Yes, sir. I turned around and glared at my husband. He looked pale, and his lips were quivering. Whether that was from his nausea or from the way I was staring at him, I would never know. But I knew what all this implied immediately. Abe had been spending time alone with this woman at home while I was in the hospital. He must have eaten some rotten and moldy cheese left in the fridge, thinking it was blue cheese, and then got nausea and a severe stomach ache afterwards. They were in so much pain that they had to call an ambulance. I could not believe that they were carried to the same hospital where I was hospitalized. My only conclusion was that a divine force was smiling upon me that day and brought me the truth of the nature of Abraham's infidelity. You and that woman in her underwear, the one next to us, you ate the same thing. What the hell does that mean, Abraham Banning? He didn't answer my question honestly, but instead retaliated.
It's all your fault. You left that cheese in the fridge in plain frickin' sight, and now you're making me suffer to death.
I think he was trying to yell at me, but his voice was completely overwhelmed by sickened moans resulting from the pain in his abdomen. I decided to ignore what he said, thinking that I could finally get even with him for what he had done to me. What? I can't hear what you're saying.
Please. I'm in pain. Call the nurse, please.
Oh, wow. You seem to be in a lot of pain. Maybe eating some more cheese will help you with your problem here.
Frick you. Get the nurse up here now.
What are you talking about? It's only a matter of how you think you feel, Abe.
I'm in real pain.
Well, if you have a strong will to stop with bullshit, you'll get better in no time. You're so pathetic.
You frickin' bitch. Oh.
I proceeded to stick my finger right up against my husband's nose. It was drenched with snot and tears because of how much effort he was putting into vomiting up everything he had. Sorry, who is the frickin' bitch around here? When I was suffering from morning sickness, you said things to me that were far worse than anything I just said. Don't tell me you've forgotten all about that, eh? And you had the audacity to bring your adulterous lover into my home while I, your pregnant wife, was in the hospital. I'll never forgive you for this.
I'm sorry.
He apologized to me in a quiet voice, clutching his stomach. It seemed he finally realized what he had done. He seemed to understand, at least to a certain extent, how cruel he'd been when I was suffering from morning sickness. I called the nurse for him. That's when the family of the woman in the next bed barged into the room. To my great surprise, the woman was married, and her husband was a close friend of Abe's. The woman, who was later identified as Mrs. Patricia Doyle, and Abe had met at the same barbecue party he'd gone to a few months prior, and their affair had begun when they had drunken sex in a hotel after the izakaya. Mr. Doyle, better known as Callum, was furious when he found out what happened. Not surprising, his own wife had been eating rotten cheese in her underwear at another man's house, and she was having an affair with a friend of his. Under pressure from both myself and Callum, the bastards told the truth as they both continued vomiting and moaning in sickly fashion. I had had just about enough of this bullshit, so I left Abe at the hospital and went back to my parents' house. I didn't want to go back to the same house where he was having his affair. When my parents found out what had happened, they were very concerned about me and my well-being, and agreed to support me until I gave birth. After that, I decided to let the lawyer my parents introduced me to handle all the divorce proceedings, as I put my pregnant body before anything else. The father of my child, Abraham Banning, is a terrible man, but the child is innocent, and I won't let anyone tell me otherwise. I decided to stay away from the complicated process because I thought that the anger, sadness, and resentment resulting from the transactions would be detrimental as prenatal care. According to my lawyer, Mr. Banning claimed he'd only had a playful relationship with Patricia, and he repeatedly refused to divorce me, saying he wanted to start things over. I couldn't see any scenario that projected him and I back together, living a life together, raising children together, and getting old together, not after his brutal betrayal. So, of course, I refused to get back together with him. I also proceeded to demand alimony and child support in one lump sum. Of course, I also demanded alimony from Patricia Doyle. Apparently, Abe is now up to his neck in debt, And in order to make ends meet, he's working at night in addition to his day job. Which, by the way, has pretty much become a hellhole for him as well. Things like this travel quick through the grapevine, and it didn't take long for rumor to begin circulating about how he'd cheated on his wife. He now has a window-side job, working miscellaneous tasks and making a frankly pathetic amount of money. And since he had an affair with the wife of his friend, he was cut off from all his friends, and has been living in solitude ever since. I gave birth to a healthy daughter with the help of my parents, and although I will have to live as a single mother, I will do my best so that my child will not be lonely, and that she lives a life full of love, happiness, and opportunity.